Hello. Hey, Kevin. Hey, Dr. Lili. Good afternoon, everybody. In light of everyone's schedule and busy time, I'm going to do a brief introduction. And first and foremost, thank you so much for attending the Regenerative Medicine Forum of the International Society of Regenerative Medicine. It is an honor for me to be here today. My name is Philip Chen. I'm the Assembly Member for the 55th Assembly District, which represents Orange County and San Bernardino County. And this has been an annual tradition. A tradition has been going on for the past 3 years. Here in the state capitol, I'm in the state capitol with you. We wish you well from Sacramento. And unfortunately, due to the pandemic, this year's forum will be done via Zoom. But certainly this information is extremely important and beneficial, not only for our community in the health world, but also for the entire world. So I feel very, very blessed to be here today to be the moderator with you. There's a couple of people I'd like to introduce before we start the introductions as well as the seminar itself. I want to thank Dr. Lili, a mentor and a friend, for being here today, as she's the lovely young woman waving in the white suit. And also Dr. George Shannon from USC, who is the director of the Rongsheng Shu Regenerative Life Science Laboratory at USC Davis School of Gerontology. I also want to thank the Vice Mayor of Sacramento for being with us today, and Mr. Kevin Shu, the President of the International Society of Regenerative Medicine and Wound Repair. Kevin is not only a very dear friend, but he is a world philanthropist as well as a innovator in the world of regenerative medicine. So I, and the rest of the world, owe him a debt of gratitude for all the things that he's done. So thank you for arranging this, Kevin. It is absolutely fantastic. With that, I'd like to introduce some of the speakers that we will be having today. I understand also Speaker Anthony Rendon will also be here with us momentarily. Also want to thank him for his presence. Oh, Speaker Rendon, thank you so much for being with us. If I may, if you could say a couple of words, but first and foremost, I want to thank Speaker Rendon for being here today. I know he wanted to say a few brief words. Speaker Rendon, honored to have him in our leadership here in the California State Assembly. And he himself has a really history in terms of our relationship, but also an amazing career, coming from a 0.83 GPA to getting his PhD, now being a speaker since March of 2016. I'm very honored to have him here with us in the Assembly. He's done so much for the community, and he's been a leader in public policy in regenerative life science. So, Mr. Speaker, without further ado, if you'd like to say a couple words, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Phil Chen has been a friend of mine since 2006. Kevin, I know Kevin is on this, Kevin Shu is on this call. He's been a longtime friend as well. I just want to say hello to so many familiar faces and longtime friends who are here today. Just wanted to really wish you a good afternoon and thank you once again for having me greet your meeting. The last several years I've had the honor of doing so, but it's been in person. I'm hoping next year I can see you all again. Just I hope I can see you all in person. We can be in the same building, and hopefully that'll be in the Capitol. Again, I want to thank the Shu family and the International Society of Regenerative Medicine and Wound Repair for leading this discussion. I think Phil hit on some very important and interesting topics in his introduction. I think what today is about, and in general what the organization is about science and the application of science on the lives of people, and making sure that science continues to do good work in the lives of people. And we know that that's what the Shu family is all about. It's important that we make sure that we continue to do just that. And we have here in California, I'm proud of our public university system, so many Nobel Prize winners who have helped to do that. And I think what's exciting about this event is it helps to bring that all those different parties together. The sort of the international aspect of this event within the context of California helps to marry those two, and really puts the human face to medicine and to science. So I want to thank the Shu family for all of that, and I wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, thank you so much for your time and your leadership in this arena. With that, I'm really excited to bring two amazing speakers today to talk a little bit about regenerative life science. If I can briefly introduce both of these speakers. The first one is Dr. Abhilash Mishra. He is the founding director of the Kevin Shu Initiative on Science, Technology, and Public Policy at the University of Chicago Harris School of Public Policy. He is an entrepreneur, educator whose work is situated at the intersection of technology, social inequality. Dr. Abhilash is also a trained physicist and holds a PhD from Caltech, a master in physics from the University of Oxford. He is also the recipient of the Rhodes Scholarship and the Clinton Global Initiative University Distinguished Alumni Award. Dr. Abhilash, thank you for being with us today. Also want to introduce another amazing speaker, Dr. Aaron Mertz. Dr. Aaron Mertz is a biophysicist, a science advocate, and the founding director of the Aspen Institute Science and Society program, launched in 2019 to help foster a diverse scientific workforce whose contributions extend beyond the laboratory and to generate greater public appreciation for science as a vital tool to address global challenges. He's completed a bachelor's degree in physics at the Washington University in St. Louis, a master's degree in the history of science at the University of Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, and a doctorate in physics at Yale University, and a postdoc in training in cell biology at Rockefeller University. Of course, we have world-renowned scholars giving us their insight. So without further ado, it is an honor to have both of these people here. If Dr. Abhilash Mishra and Dr. Aaron Mertz would like to go ahead and take it away. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Assemblyman Chen, and thank you so much to the Mibo family and to the California State Assembly for hosting this. My name is Abhilash Mishra, and I would like to begin by thanking Speaker Rendon, Assemblyman Chen, Dr. Lili, my dear friend and mentor, Kevin Xu, and the larger Mibo family for giving me and Aaron this opportunity to talk about some recent work that we've been doing on bolstering public trust in science. So as a preface, this is work that is going to appear in an editorial in Science magazine in the next week, and is grew out of work, a collaboration that Aaron and I have had in the past 1 year around where we started discovering that the pandemic has actually led to real issues around public trust in science. And we started talking about how we can design policies that can truly bolster public trust in science. So with that, I'd like to just give a very brief introduction to the Kevin Xu Initiative at the University of Chicago. We are a policy research center based at the Harris School of Public Policy, and our focus is on problems that are at the intersection of science, technology, and socioeconomic inequality, both here in the US and more broadly globally. And some examples of the current areas of research include how we can improve public trust in science and technology, which is going to be the focus of our talk today. I also work on how we can train the next generation of innovators from underserved communities, both here in the US as well as globally, in order to accelerate innovation. And finally, how we can leverage technology to accelerate human capital in the 21st century. With that, I'll turn it over to Aaron to give an introduction to the Aspen Institute.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here today. And as was mentioned in my introduction, I had my postdoctoral training in cell biology. And when I saw this invitation to speak to this group that really supports regenerative medicine and wound healing, I just wanted to mention that my training as a skin biologist was so central to my science work and what propelled me into this work that I'm doing now in science and society. Abhilash and I actually go back about 12 years to Oxford, where we were both studying, and we were both setting out on these careers to become academic scientists, but we're both responding over the years to this tension, I think, between society and science, and just seeing that there are many more productive ways that science and society can interact. And so, as he mentioned, we've been collaborating over the past year from his vantage point at the University of Chicago and from mine at the Aspen Institute. I'm based in New York City, and the Aspen Institute's headquartered in Washington, D.C. Our mission overall at the Aspen Institute is to help realize a free, just, and equitable society. And my program specifically seeks to elevate public trust in science and help foster a more diverse and a more engaged scientific workforce. And for us, that's a positive feedback loop. If we have a public that trusts science more, we will likely have more people want to go into the scientific workforce. And if we have a scientific workforce that's more engaged with the public, then we think we're going to have much greater public trust in science. And we achieve this through convenings of experts and thought leaders in roundtables. We mobilize a vocal and diverse constituency of science advocates, and we implement significant outreach efforts. And I just wanted to highlight a couple recent and upcoming projects. Back in October, in collaboration with the company Good and Upworthy and the science outlet Leaps Mag, we published a digital magazine about intersections of science, politics, and policy called The Future of Science in America, the Election Issue. And we approach this question from a number of different vantage points, scientists, experts, the public, sorry, I was hearing some background noise there, celebrities, philanthropists, and so on. I'm launching next month a conference called the Aspen Global Congress on Scientific Thinking and Action. And this is a worldwide community of about 100 science advocates and communicators from over 50 countries. We were supposed to meet a year ago in Italy, but due to the pandemic, the in-person event couldn't happen. So we're meeting next month virtually, but it's to carve out strategies and best practices for engaging with the public on key scientific issues. And out of that work, we're producing a short form documentary series called Infodemic: Global Conversations on Science and Misinformation that some networks will be broadcasting in the next month or so. And finally, I want to mention a youth initiative that we're launching soon called Your Future is Science, that seeks to position young students, particularly high schoolers from communities of color, on educational and professional trajectories towards science.
Great, thank you so much, Aaron. So I would like to begin with pointing out why public trust in science is foundational to accomplishing core public policy priorities, both at the federal level as well as at the state level. And just to highlight three broad policy priorities where public trust in science is foundational. The first is public health and national security. We need scientific trust to combat pandemics and improving public health. As we have observed in the past 1 year, having the larger society or larger community not trust in scientific evidence and expertise really leads to deadly outcomes. The second is reskilling for future jobs. Reskilling workers, particularly those without college degrees, to enter the 21st century workforce is an urgent policy priority, and that requires broad-based public trust in science and in scientists. And finally, if we want to accelerate innovation, which is at the heart of economic growth, we need more innovators from all backgrounds to drive greater and more equitable economic growth. And as you can imagine, to be able to accelerate the innovation and have innovators from across the socioeconomic spectrum, we also need to make sure that there is greater public trust in science across the population and not just in small groups of people. So I would like to begin with some anecdotes which really puzzled Aaron and me as we were beginning this work. And it is this very strange dichotomy in American science during a pandemic. Both Aaron and me went to elite American research universities, Aaron at Yale and me at Caltech. And our perspective of American science was that of endless progress. And that was manifested in the stories we saw in over the last 1 year. We had a reusable rocket from SpaceX launch 2 astronauts in space. We had multiple vaccines that were developed in record time. And we even had an artificial intelligence algorithm write an op-ed that could be mistaken for a human. And while these amazing scientific accomplishments were happening in the larger society, we also saw that there was a lack of adherence to scientific recommendations that was fueling the worst health crisis in modern history. And the question that we started with was, what is at the heart of this disassociation? Why is it that in the most scientifically advanced country in the world, and in fact in history, we see this vast disassociation between how scientists operate and where society is? Aaron.
So we're going to offer a couple of insights into what might be driving this dichotomy between this breathtaking discovery on the one hand, but then a public that often does not understand, appreciate, or abide by recommendations that are coming out of the scientific and medical community. I want to start with one piece of data, this trend from the Pew Research Center, and they've been tracking public opinion on various issues for decades. And this plot is showing that there has been pretty low and stable confidence in the leaders of the scientific and medical community for decades now, achieving in 2018 44% for the scientific community and just 37% for the medical community, which shows that more than half of our country does not have strong confidence in these groups. And these are the ones who are responsible for making us healthy, making us connected, making us secure. And so this for us is alarming, and I would love to figure out together how we can get this line to go up in the coming years. Another trend that I'll point to comes from an international survey. This was done by Gallup in collaboration with the Wellcome Trust. And they did a remarkable survey of 140 countries on their public trust in science. And one of the strongest trends that emerged from that polling was that greater public trust in science occurred in places where there was less income inequality. Or I can say that differently, countries that had high income inequality had lower trust in science. When you have a significant gap between the richest and the poorest in the country, that's when public trust in science was strongest. So parts of the world like Russia, Brazil, the United States, South Africa, that have huge disparities between the richest and the poorest, those are also places where there is pretty low trust in science, compared to Scandinavian countries, Iceland, Belgium, where there's a much larger middle class, not as great rich, not as great poor, and those have much stronger trust in science. So it's really this inequality that's very strongly correlated with trust in science.
And that echoes with some other data that we have seen in the United States. And I think our core hypothesis as to why we see this disassociation is disassociation between scientific progress and the lack of public trust in science is because the vast majority of Americans actually do not have an opportunity to engage in the scientific process. So if you think about it, the vast majority of Americans actually never get a chance to attend the top research hubs, which are predominantly the top research universities in the United States. So this is a plot from Raj Chetty at Harvard, which shows that if you look at student distribution, students attending top universities, there are more students who come from the top 1% of the income distribution than come from the bottom 50% of the income distribution. So these distributions, this plot kind of shows the massive inequality in opportunity of attending elite scientific institutions that exists in the larger American public. And as you can imagine, this can lead to greater public distrust in science. We also see similar patterns in who gets to be an innovator in America. So if we measure the patent rates, we see that overwhelmingly people who come up with patents come from the top 1% as compared to the bottom 50%. This is indicative of the idea that because a large fraction of, in fact, the majority of Americans are disassociated from the scientific process, this would naturally lead to an inherent distrust in science. And that is the core problem that needs to be solved.
I want to point out also that a lot of Americans are greatly disconnected from science. And this was shown in this 2017 poll by Research America that asked a very simple question: can you name a living scientist? And more than 80% of the people who responded could not. And I find that shocking and disappointing because there are scientists who are on popular television shows. I will say that this data is from 2017, so it's likely that Anthony Fauci would score a little higher. But I think this is very revealing about how disconnected Americans are from how science actually gets done and who the practitioners of science are. Another question from that poll was, can you name any institution, company, or organization where medical or health research is conducted? And 2/3 of Americans couldn't. And again, this is shocking and disappointing because any local university, any local hospital would count for this answer. And again, because this was done before the pandemic, it's likely that Pfizer, Moderna, two of the companies that have produced vaccines authorized for use in the United States, are more in the news now. But I still think that we have a long way to go for Americans to understand who scientists are and also how and where science is conducted.
So to combat this, Aaron and I have an op-ed coming out, which is proposing that the US government establish an American Science Corps. And the idea is to establish a government-funded and administered program that places early career scientists around the country to serve in two principal roles. The first is to build public trust in science through community and civic science workshops in places where scientists traditionally shy away from. So imagine places like places of worship or county fairs or city halls where scientists traditionally don't interact with people. And the idea of the American Science Corps would be to place scientists in those places where they get to engage with folks who have never seen a scientist in the first place, and design meaningful educational experiences in these situations. And the second priority is to reskill Americans, especially those without a college degree, through community-based training programs like boot camps and innovator training programs to prepare them for 21st century jobs. And the idea of this American Science Corps is actually inspired by a great American institution, which is the Agricultural Extension Program. Speaker Randon was talking about the state universities and the land grant universities in California. The Agricultural Extension Program was actually established to take the results or the fruits of the land grant universities program to the farmers. It was established as a way to create a bridge between academic researchers on one hand and farmers who wanted to use the research on the other hand. So this established a network of agricultural extension agents who would go and take the results of research and transfer them to farmers through workshops that were conducted in the field. And then they would take the concerns of the farmers back to the researchers, which would then create this two-way loop between farmers and researchers to create an R&D that was truly collaborative, an R&D institution that was truly collaborative. Economists have argued that the Agricultural Extension Program was one of the core driving policies that led to the increase in agricultural productivity in the 20th century. This was established in 1912 by the Smith-Liver Act, and in just 4 to 5 decades led to massive gains in agricultural productivity. And our vision is essentially to take this, the model of this institution and apply that to science more broadly. So the idea would be for the American Science Corps service members to serve as cooperative extension agents between scientists who are doing traditional academic research at universities and citizens, and to act as a bridge between these two worlds, which we feel have become very disassociated.
So specifically, how we're proposing the American Science Corps to work is to place eventually, maybe 5 years from now, 20,000 early career scientists across the country, having them trained in science communication and in community organizing. I will say that this kind of civic science engagement work is not typically part of the training that a scientist receives in college, in graduate school, or in a postdoc. So it will require training by people coming from other fields like social sciences, psychology, the arts. But one of the things that I think is very exciting is that there is a younger generation of scientists that's very excited about doing science engagement. I came of age in physics departments, which I think can be quite conservative at times and not very encouraging of work that's more societally interfacing. But I'm seeing young scientists now who are 25 to 35 years old who say it's very important to them to be a scientist who is engaged with society. They're going to Washington, D.C. or to their state capitals to lobby the government on behalf of science. They're very excited to give public talks. So we want to build on that enthusiasm from those younger generations so that they can do this work formally and full time. They would be based at local government offices and or colleges and conduct their programs in communities at all the spaces Abhilash mentioned, town halls, theaters, places of worship. And again, these are places that scientists usually don't go, but that's where their training in community building and in communications will be so helpful. And as he mentioned, modeling this after the Extension Service for agriculture, it's important for them to listen to the challenges faced by communities and to communicate that work or those issues back to researchers who can do work that will benefit the people. So they can be these intermediaries between the public and between the practicing scientists who are universities or even companies. So it's also an opportunity, we believe, to revitalize and redeploy scientific capital. There's a lot of talk throughout the years, but it's been really underscored this past year that there aren't a lot of opportunities for people coming out of graduate school with PhDs to get academic jobs. It's not a one-to-one replacement rate between the professor who's training and then the dozen or more trainees in that lab. So add on top of that a global pandemic that has meant revenue streams at universities due to changes in enrollment or at medical centers due to the losses from not having as many voluntary procedures means that there are far fewer job possibilities for scientists in the coming period. You can see in this graph here from September in Nature that 3/5 are concerned about their career prospects as a result of the pandemic. So this proposal that we're making for state and federal government to support an American Science Corps is a way to redeploy that talent, that training that these people have received towards something very concrete and beneficial toward their communities. And so we want to think about other opportunities to elevate this work at the intersection of science, technology, and society. And I will say very humbly that Abhilash and I got our jobs in science, tech, and society through a tremendous convergence of luck, opportunity, and privilege. We knew people at certain organizations who were able to help us carry out this vision to start programs on behalf of science and society, but these jobs are very rare. So if we could find a way to institutionalize them more through the government, we think it would be a terrific way. And one other part that I think is important to mention here is to make these jobs attractive to young scientists, they need to be compensated and prestigious in the way that a research job is. And we think that investing in this kind of work is really important in order for the scientific venture to continue. The scientific agencies who could be funding this work will rely on having a public that is voting for politicians to support their agencies. So if we had more support from the public for that work, we think everyone would benefit in the long run.
So to conclude, I would say that our vision really is that to improve public trust in science, we need to bring the university to the people. A lot of the conversation around higher educational access often forgets the fact that the vast majority of Americans will actually never attend university. And we need new policies and strategies to make sure that we are reaching those people who have never had an opportunity to go to university or who have been to university, have never studied science. and create opportunities for people who might have gone to university 30 years back and might want to reskill and find new jobs in the climate economy, in the artificial intelligence economy. And so creating structures and policies that truly bring the university to the people, we believe is crucial for the scientific enterprise in the United States to thrive. Because this is a global forum, I would also like to emphasize that this is not just an American challenge. This is a challenge across the world. I grew up in India, and I was really struck by the differences in scientific trust that happen in India and California, and the importance of having scientists deeply engaged with the larger public. And so I hope that what we've conveyed is an idea that is not just applicable to the United States and California, but everywhere in the world. This is truly, public trust in science is truly a global challenge that we need to confront. And I would also like to conclude by thanking Dr. Lili and Kevin Xu and the MEBO group for supporting this work in science and society. I think this kind of work requires an unusual collaboration between philanthropy, industry, government, and academia. And I hope that we're able to take this forward in collaboration with all of you. So thank you so much. And we'll stop here to take any questions if there are any.
Dr. Mertz and Dr. Mishra, this was extremely informative, and I'm so glad to be attending this incredible international forum for 4 years in a row. And again, thank you for Dr. Lili and Kevin for making this happen. You know, when you said that a large, vast majority of people can't name a living scientist, I imagine the people that did name someone would probably be Bill Nye, the science guy, something that is a bridger between laymen and the science community. But I think this is so important, especially during this pandemic, as a legislator to public policy maker. As you said, Dr. Mertz, Dr. Mishra, there has been a distrust in terms of how the vaccines have rolled out, the safety of the vaccines, how they're rolled out in the area of expediency, as well as the 58 counties here in California, how the rollout, as well as the public safety and the public health has been administered, when they can go out to eat, when they can't, has been a source of quite not only distrust, but dissatisfaction between public policy makers, the science community, as well as people who are everyday Californians. Do you have any suggestions in the science community, Dr. Mishra, Dr. Mertz, in terms of, do you think when it comes to public policy and scientists and talking to Californians, ways in which we can increase the trust and bridge the gap between these three intersections? Do you believe that community forums would be helpful? How can I, as a public policy maker, help increase the trust in the science in the science community to Californians?
So one idea I think it's very important to convey to the public is the process of science. I've seen some very interesting empirical results from some collaborators of mine who work in psychology that shows that when people understand how science is done, meaning what it means to design an experiment with control groups, how consensus is reached, how data are analyzed, people can actually change their minds about long-held beliefs they had about science on things that conflicted with their religious or political views, such as about evolution or about climate change. So it's not about bombarding people with more facts, more data, but actually that process about how science is done. And I can give one example to that that I think was really sad for the scientific endeavor. Early on in the pandemic, the data at the time were not suggestive of the need for people to wear masks. We did not at the time know about asymptomatic transmission. The view was only if you have symptoms would you be able to transmit COVID, and then you should wear the mask. And then new data revealed actually people carrying it asymptomatically, you can transmit it even if you don't have symptoms, everyone should wear a mask. This was very detrimental for scientists because they were seen as flip-flopping, inconsistent, But actually what I wish people could realize is they were actually very consistent by following the data that they had at the time. And it's like, it's that detachment from the data. It's just, this is the recommendation. This is what you need to go with. That's what I think we need to pay attention more, is to just how people arrive at those conclusions and those recommendations.
Said about how to operationalize this thing. Assembly mentioned, like you mentioned how that might actually function between policymakers and the public. I think we also need to think about incentivizing, creating the right incentives for scientists to engage not only with policymakers, but also to engage with the public and to create that bridge. And I think we kind of missing structures where that bridge happens for outside of traditional university settings. So I would humbly suggest that creating pilots where we can incentivize young scientists to go out to communities, particularly low-income communities where most people have never been to college, and create and have small workshops, particularly workshops that kind of explain the process of science, as Aaron mentioned. I think is going to help us build that trust. But this trust building also, a lot of evidence from the psychology community and the economics community shows that trust building takes a long time. So I feel like we need we need to build institutions that do this over longer periods of time, and not in structures where someone goes to a community, conducts a workshop and then leaves. I think like the long-term building of trust just requires a fundamentally new kind of institution, and that's why we kind of we're trying to make the comparison with the agricultural extension programs, because that is a place where extension agents would build relationship with farmers over years, and that is the thing that would kind of lead to trust. I would also mention one final thing, that in a world where we kind of see social media balkanization, a lot of information comes from small groups in certain kinds of social media environments. It is very important to have the in-person interaction beyond the world that people engage with online. And so again, sort of going back to almost a brick and mortar strategy of having people interact with people is actually far more effective in building trust in science, as opposed to asking them to watch a documentary on National Geographic. Nothing wrong with watching a documentary on National Geographic, but.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, Dr. Mers. That's so incredibly helpful. Just your short answers right now has completely enlightened me, because people ask me all the time. They ask me, what Dr. Fauci said, like you said, Dr. Mers, it's okay not to wear a mask. Now you have to wear a mask. And they ask me what happened, and in terms of the process, it was much more difficult for me to explain with facts and figures, as you said, as opposed to explaining the process. It's also not indicative of doing personal attacks to the person who has differing beliefs. So I think what you both said is incredible and really at the cutting edge of technology and public policy. So thank you for that. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce really one of the reasons why we're all here today, and that's because of Kevin Xu and MIBO International. And I'm so proud to call Kevin a friend, a leader, an inspiration for me. He's an entrepreneur, philanthropist, and a social activist and scientist in neuroscience. And after graduating from USC, he was appointed as the Chief Scientific Officer at MIBO International. And 3 years later, he became the president of MIBO International. If it wasn't for him, I would tell you, just in the Sacramento community, the 80 legislators in the Assembly, the 40 senators in the Senate, and the governor himself would not know so much about regenerative life science. So we owe him a debt of gratitude. So with that, our friend, I call him the Tony Stark of the science community. He just doesn't need as much attention as Elon Musk because he's a humble man. With that, I'll let Mr. Kevin Xu take it away with some closing remarks. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to extend my gratitude to all the participants for this fourth briefing on regenerative medicines. And also especially to our speaker, Rendon, my friend Phil, Avilash, and Dr. Merz, for your kind word and leadership. As we all know, this is our 4th year of doing the briefing to the lawmakers and also our friend regarding to the advancement in science community, and also what should we be well prepared for future development. It's all because to commemorate my passing father, Dr. Xu. As a scientist or a doctor, he spent his entire life pursuing the truth of science and also revealing the secret of human regenerative potentialities. And because of that, end up with 1.2 million doctors around the world, and also countless number of people and young doctors and leaders who follow in his footsteps. Over the last year, we're all knowing the crisis, the pandemic that crashing through the entire world. But we're also seeing many ways and forms of his legacies that's being passed on to the next generation of leaders and scientists. We're knowing that Rongxiang Xu Regenerative Therapeutic Center at BIDMC of Harvard Medical School had established the first skin manifestation symptom of COVID database. And we're also knowing that we're one of the first responders to the explosion that happened in Lebanon. And also we're knowing that the Cal State LA become the first mass vaccination center happening in Los Angeles. So all of these things we have witnessed is showing that the importance of science as a fundamental element for people to connect, communicate, and also to establish the value of themselves, also correlating to the societies. So I believe in future, we will see many, many examples. We will see young scientists that be able to withhold a further deeper responsibilities to build the world for the betterment of the humanities. Thank you all for coming.
Kevin, thank you so much for, again, sharing your time and sharing your vision and your dreams of educating the world via science. This has always been enlightening for me, as well as I'm sure I can speak on behalf of Speaker Rendon that he appreciates your contributions to society and to the world. We're excited at being able to still continue to host this amazing forum here in the state capitol, and we look forward to next year having you in person. Again, thank you everyone for your time, Dr. Merz, Dr. Mishra, Dr. Lili, and Kevin and Dr. Shannon for all the contributions you've given to us. I think a lot of things that we learned today will continue on, and it is a great point of continued discussion so that we can bridge that gap between science as well as public policymakers and all Californians here in the state of California. Again, thank you so much. I wish everyone a safe Thursday, and we look forward to the one next year. Thank you, everybody.
Oh，谢谢各位的参与啊，我们今天的会议到现在结束了，大家可以下线，谢谢，拜拜。